go. So we're obviously in the garden. We're going to go over some stuff mostly here on the whiteboard and quite a bit of topics to get to. We're talking about grow. What you don't see is I've got my GoPro right here. I'm going to take video for me to post later as a digestible form, but for right now, this is basically just live, and as I do it, so of course the recorded stuff's going to be edited a little bit better than what you're going to see here, of course. And I'm going between software to kind of make this happen. I need to get my chat right up in here on OBS, but I haven't. Like, I'm signed in, right? So OBS saves my desktop stuff, and it syncs here to the notebook, so I have to have a completely different scene and everything set up for the notebook, but we're working on that. So all I gotta do now, we're gonna spread the link here before I get going. So we gotta get known. We have to get known. Let me get this shared about. Bling. Oh my God, I'm so live right now. I'm so live. Yeah, it's audio coming right off the notebook. So it's like super directional. The moment I walk away from it, it kind of falls apart. So let's see if we can't work on that. I got a jack too. Wow. Let's see if we can do anything for it here. See if I can boost it a little bit more. What I might end up having to do is just get a real microphone to plug into this. But for now, not bad. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's true. So let me slide this up a little bit more. And bear with me if the sound cuts out. There is a lot of fans on right now. But like I said, I'm going to be doing the video cut of this as well. I'm going to try to show the whiteboard, but it might be a little bit tricky here. So I might even move the webcam over here a little bit, or I mean the GoPro over here. Even as like on the side, so I'll trip over the dumb thing, right? We'll check this angle, see if this works too. If this works out well, I'll just do everything from this angle, right? Yeah, that's not gonna be too bad. That's not gonna be bad. camera started here. I'm gonna kind of move stuff around just to see how what it looks like from my angle and eyes there. That's not bad, right? There we go. There we go. So there's some of the food right there. Obviously, I got a plant list, but I don't have a whole lot going in right now, just because we're doing a lot of cleaning, and we're doing some other work in the room. I'm doing some automation, switching over a bunch of different shit basically. So it's gonna be a little bit there. I definitely got a lot of dumb shit. So that's it. Let me get this going. Alright, so some of the first few things that I want to go through, just because this is the first one, it's the inaugural one and all that stuff. So with that said, I've probably been doing this for a dozen years, maybe longer. Lose count after a while. I worked at pretty much one company. There's another, it was basically a retailer that we switched over, but it's basically the same company. Past that, I was a sales rep for a nutrient company for a little while there. It was pretty early on. But for basically the last 10, 15 years, I've done nothing but stand behind commerce here, stock nutrients and breed, and pick apart problems, right? So I've seen, I keep on, I'm living this through as we talk about it, and I've gone through a ton of this. I've gone through just about everything and anything anybody's ever came into the store and talked about or asked about. Um, Aside from some super spaceship kind of grow, no, I've probably seen it and smelled it and messed with it. It's not to say to toot the horn or anything like that. No, really, it's just I've had a lot of opportunity to talk to people a whole lot, and from all that communication, you really get to know. Even if I don't have, say, some products, I know that I have really good feedback from some really quality customers and growers, other people I respect in the industry, and those companies themselves. And we'll get into some of that too. There's a lot of trepidation about taking advice uh, from someone that sells you something, right? Because of that, everybody assumes that you're going to be selling something, and that's just not the case, at least for our location. It's pretty open, right? I like to say that if you go into a good shop, you're going to run into a crew that's going to basically, yeah, they're there to sell you things, but like the main focus there isn't to get rich off you. The main focus is to just really take care of the problem or whatever your goals are at that moment. If I can check all those boxes for you, that's like a big thing for me, for all of us at our store. The margins just aren't there for like just to make bulk money anymore. Um, so what you're finding now, it's like a lot of the big box stores. It Yeah, sure, lists of them and that and all that. Each different week, there's a different sale, and this company's toilet paper is cheaper than this company's toilet paper for this week. But you also notice the Coke and the Pepsi products switch back and forth. And when they go on sale, right? Sometimes both at the same time because they're trying to really get at it. But naturally, it's always within par, right? Within a dollar or two of each other. And that's from store to store to store to store, unless they're doing that doorbuster or something like right. So, with that said, the only way I make money from you really is from you just constantly having success. Probably you think we'd make a lot of money off pesticides, you kind of do, but like if you're having more problems with plants and not eating as much, you're not focused on other things you want to do. You're not buying another light while you have bugs. You were so don't even want to mess with extra plants at that point. So the biggest goal is to really just get you down the road, get you to finish the race, right? Um, and so with people that start getting into it, and we're going to go through basics on different conferences and all that. But what we're really going to start with is basically what are some things that we see, especially on flower. We'll get the veg and everything. Not this time around, but we will. And our goal is going to be basically this time to break down flower because it's probably the biggest thing that the most people are interested in, right? Um, and we can get through veg and all that. Everybody wants to hear about flower. Um, without diving into flower completely the first time around, let's instead go through first off answering the big questions. And after that, we can kind of conquer the rest of the stuff. But everybody's heard something or has an opinion about something or has a feel about something for sure. So if that's our deal, then let's really spank that first, right? That's me carrying on to try to make that last a little bit longer while I get my thoughts together, right? So, believe it or not, um, there's very few unique questions that we get, but there's a ton of frequent same questions we get. And if it's not what hours we have for that day, it's going to be uh, if we have soil in stock or something like that. Really, you guys got CalMag, it'll be pretty nondescript. They won't really tell you what kind of brand of CalMag or anything like that. Um, you guys got CalMag? Yes or no? Yep, sure do. Come get it. Open till 7:45. There you go. Uh, put your put your stuff out. Don't touch your roaches and all that junk. Don't want roaches all over the fucking garden. Don't throw them in the drain. None of that. Keep a little ashtray for that junk. I'm not gonna tell you not to puff up in a room, but I'll also tell you why you shouldn't. And the top one isn't going to be a, your plants don't like it, whatever. The bigger reason you don't want to do it is if you've got something like these aren't air cooled, but especially if they've got like panes of glass in them because they're air cooled, that can build up, and it will build up over time. It'll get that resiny tar coating on it. And then with your open lamps, this is a thing that can happen over time too, especially if you're just clouding it the fuck out. Be advised on that. Um, your pre-filter on your pre-filter on your carbon filters. If you smoke too much in your room, that pre-filter is going to turn a caramel color, so you get all caked up full of goop, and that's no good, obviously. That said, if you burn up in a room, I'm not going to bitch. So let's get kind of into it. Now that I moved this around, it's kind of funny, right? So let's try that. I'm going to take a seat here too. We're going to check that out. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. That'll work, kind of. I wish I had something to stand that up on. I gotta work on that one. Maybe we'll do it. Sucks. We'll get this out of the shot. See the surge protector. I guess they do. That'll do it. Yep. So, some of the most common problems that we see, especially for flower, that was like pretty clumsy, right? So some of the biggest things that we see for flower, obviously people want big flowers, they want a great yield to come off the plant, all that basically. So, common problems just always come down to more. You say, take a shield, right? What kind of fertilizer basically puts out the most? That's a big deal for a lot of people. Uh, Price, right? Price is going to be a big one. We're always worried about how many bottles does this whole thing require, um, and how well is it supposed effectiveness, right? That's a big one. How does that produce this shit? And then thirdly, we start talking inequality, and so we start getting into debates at some point of what makes quality, right? Quality is a multifaceted thing. What factors makes that? So these are like pretty much 90%, right? If I'm not counting bugs and mildew. Bugs and mildew are pretty important on the list there. You get a lot of feedback about that. People wanting to know all about the bugs and mildew. Rightly so. You got a lot of folks out there that got a lot of bugs and mildew problems out there. And so for a myriad of reasons and rhymes of why I really wish I could get that to stand up like right there. That'd be perfect, right? Um, Gosh darn it! And they get like the easel or something, like, or maybe I'll get this mounted up here. But that's the problem. I've got to run this off the laptop instead of a camera right now. So the action camera, the GoPro right now, just doesn't like being hooked up to the notebook and recording. So this is getting to be a babe, huh? No, we'll make it through though. We'll make it through. We're gonna work on this for sure. So these are like the big ones, and that's just it, right? There's some other things we can add too. How about genetics? Right? Then we also talk about how much, yeah, I hear that a lot. If I put 20 plants underneath the light, how much am I going to get? That opens up a lot of questions. First, how much light? How much light you got? And what area is covered? Right? Big deals. Big deals right there. Big deals. How much am I going to get? Well, how much light do you got? What's the area that's covered? That'll tell you exactly how much you're going to get. If I answer these two questions, we know how much we want to get, like, down to like a couple ounces even. Right? And so a lot of this, like as you see right now, it's all explainable. So for biggest yield, we're looking at output, right? But this is such an open-ended question. I don't know where to begin with that. What's going to give me the biggest yield? Well, it's not the food. Not really. I mean, we could have a debate about it, but it's not the food really, though. It's the light, right? Light. So it ties in basically all the way down here. How much light? What area you cover? Right? So after that, we also haven't even considered genetics. decides how much I'm going to yield, how much it's going to be resistant to pest, all that stuff, how good it's going to be, right? How costly it's going to be to grow the dumb stuff, right? Because these lights cost money, and it's on a fixed price for the most part, right? It might go up or down, but it's pretty much par, right? The more lights you got, the more it's costing to run the whole show, right? Even fire, air conditioning, all that shit. Water, all of it, food. So if I got like plants that yield 1 pound and grow 56 of them, that's 56 plants making 56 pounds altogether. Right? So if you got plants that yield 2 pounds, you got 56 of them all. See, now you know. Right? We're not probably going to get to all this. We're going to talk about that later, but realistically, right? We're getting a whole lot more flower per crop. So what does price look like now? Price changes. Right? What's expensive, what's cheap changes once we get going. Especially when we first start, we're looking at it like, as far as price goes, we're talking like the amount of bottles. Right? How much of this stuff do I need? That's the food theories. Yeah. So, we'll go back again. And we'll kind of expand. We'll kind of expand there. We'll focus first just on the food, right? So when we're talking about food, what we're really... Maybe if I get that to move over there, right? Get something to hook that up, that'd be sweet. There's a buffet, sorry, nothing but open on the ground. Oh well. So, I'm going to tilt this back a little bit so it makes it easier for me to write on. Move these bottles off the way. And so what I'm going to do when I make this video supplement to this is I'm going to go over the actual individual parts of nutrition that I'm using here, and I'm going to go over basically the hows and the whys of everything that I'm using there. And don't worry, after I get a lot of this shit written out, I want to bring it right over here so you guys can see. Let me see if I can get chat going. I have to work on that. So, when people ask me about food, a lot of times we'll write it down as fertilizer, dudes, right? So fertilizer and nutrients, the biggest focus on them is whether they're going to be synthetic or organic, right? So some traits for each. We talked about synth. We could also say mineral salts. Because there's the thing about synthetic. Phosphoric acid is phosphoric acid. Okay? We talk about how we derived it and all this stuff. The phosphoric acid you're going to find in even some of the most popular organic brands that are bottled up. There's citric acid and a lot of these other acids we use. Silica and all kinds of other things. We pull nitrogen straight out of the sky. It's also used as made as a byproduct. We have a lot of stuff that we use, we make, that are byproducts of things or that we directly make and would otherwise be byproducts. Some of these things come out pretty accurately to what the organic compounds are, and we could have a debate on it, but for the most part, you're going to find what you get out of organic food is realistically, it's easier to get the flavor because everything's an organic compound that's breaking down, and organic compounds breaking down make flavor. not sponsored by RC, but it sure is good right now. Wow. So you're gonna get the flavor a little bit easier. Mineral synthetics, you're gonna add something like a compost tea to it. So that could be something like Botanic Care's Pure Blend Tea. And they listed it for as a supplement for vegetative transition and bloom and for organic based compost solution. So it's gonna have stuff like worm castings, humic acids in it, seabird guano, that kind of thing. Right? Kelp, etc. Yeah, I'm not too hardcore about tea. Other in the sense that I feel that you should be using it. It is a great addition to anybody that's using media. Cocoa, Pro Mix, Sound, whatever, Ocean Forest, Cocoa Loco, any of that stuff. I feel like adding a compost tea to whatever you're doing is going to help you greatly. Not only is it going to be the plant's health, but it's also giving your microbes something to really munch on. And overall, you're going to get a lot of catalysts that you don't really find in, say, a mineral-based solution. So what I use, I don't feel like grabbing up to the gallons since they're holding up my board, but for me, I've been using Botanicare's Kind 3-based system for before it even came out, when it was still white and black label tester bottles. Very bland chart, if you could call it that, and it got worked on. And it's something like where I mess with other stuff to figure out and check out new stuff because I got people always ask me about that. So I want to be knowledgeable for sure. And so in this sense, like I do migrate around brands on a couple plants or a couple crops if I'm confident in it. But otherwise, particularly, three-part mineral is what my heart's always been about. Um, Primarily growing hydro. I really love DWC tubs. I typically run 15-gallon, 20-gallon tubs. I like octopots a whole lot, or octopots a whole lot, especially when you start making those recirculate. So you'll find that a lot of my love comes in synthetics, but I've had a lot of experience running and driving organic grows and trying to get really big performance out of them by driving soil biology, right? Getting that soil really teeming with microbes. There's a name drop for a really good book there. But really getting that soil alive really gets everything broken down and turning the food that much more better. And you'll find that's a big key in getting big growth rates out of organic crops and getting carbohydrates that'll be easy for the microbes to break down, as well as providing energy for the plant itself. So with synthetic, you'll find that most often the yield is easy, easier, but easier, right? It's not exactly brain dead easy, but it's easier to get the yield off it than it is organic. Find though that flavor has now become something we gotta work for. We gotta work for flavor. And that's because we don't have as many organic compounds going into our grow. If I keep that in mind, I can add my organic compounds in ways of teas. And if I'm really cool with my tea, hit it pretty good, we'll have some great results out of it. You can also add stuff aside from tea. Very awesome company. Check those guys out, Fish Head Farms. You can add fish it, which is like straight fish shit. And so what we get out of that is obviously the biology of the bottle, as they like to call it. and we get all kinds of microbes, and we get all kinds of digested food. And that stuff is like stuff that microbes just absolutely love to devour. Um, and we have to be careful because a lot of that waste can have a little bit of nitrate to it, but otherwise, amazing stuff. That'll give you some real fun. If you got young ones, this is a good way to get that bacteria really, really going, the fungi really, really going. You really get healthy tree roots really, really smoking there. And that's something that you're going to find that we try to really press on people, especially when you're new. Get that root game figured out. We can do all kinds of fun and dirty tricks once we really learn how to master our root system down. Like literally, we can have all kinds of fun. Where people will get 2 pounds out of a 15, you can do it out of a 5. You can do it out of a 7. And we'll get into why that is a thing as well. There's other things like CO2 and all that that are really popular, and they go into all of this for sure. But we're just keeping it straight food with a little bit of shading onto it to kind of get our ideas put together here. But for the most part, this is going to be pretty basic, huh? Give me a second. We're going to try to send out another link. We got some more people to send to. We can up the sound a little bit. Couple more heads here. We get back over there. There we go. All right. Yeah, that looks great. So next time we're probably going to just hang it up on here, right? That looks pretty good that way. Plus I'm left-handed anyhow, so I can straighten that out here. A little tight. Will look good. I don't think I can hang it up. It's not these Velcro tabs, to be honest. Let's try. We'll try one. We'll put one on there real quick. It is pretty sticky though. But trepidation is like this sticky shit's not going to do great on the mylar. Oh, they only give you one tab. Oh. That's so shitty. So I have to hang this up portrait mode, right? See if that works. Whoa! Yeah, that's not stand. Oh, that would have been great, right? Oh, oh well. Okay. We'll get that worked out. Good shit. So, like we were saying, to get the point where we need to do more work, right? Some of the work we do is admins and stuff like that. Now, you would say organic. It was easy. Yield. So why is it the minerals don't have flavor themselves? All right, why don't they do it? Because they don't have any breakdown of compounds. It's the conversion of that guano into nitrogen, that fuel that works. As we burn wood into charcoal, it's the actual work being done that creates those byproduct compounds or catalysts that just add the flavor. We're talking about stuff like kelp, amino acids, and all that. I'm just saying amino acids, obviously, that's not like a direct contributing factor, but amino acids are building blocks of everything. Sulfur, light, UV, stuff that forces resin production, also helps oil production. So, on the other way, organic, the reason it doesn't yield so well is just surely because we can't outright focus elements accurately. They, as to say, ATS has to say, we can't we can't be precise, okay? And we can be pretty precise with it. We can be pretty fucking good at it, even. You can definitely get to where we can approach, but the big limiting factor still is getting output because of the amount of energy we can throw at it with synthetic energy, and it just turns into pure energy on the other side, right? It's readily available. The plant really doesn't have to break much down into anything, and it's just instantly pretty much cooking in the plant. It takes up whatever it wants out of that whole kit. All right. So we'll go over it again. So synthetic and mineral salts, we're looking at easier yield. The flavor is something we got to work on, and that's mostly because the minerals leave no breakdown of compounds. Organics, however, flavor is easy, but the yield takes work. And that's mostly because we can't outright focus elements accurately, as to say we can't be super precise and food being bang, 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 bang ready. Right? We have to burn the coal, so to speak, to turn it into thermal energy, then it gets to work. Right? There's a process that goes on with organics, and so we can encroach on to synthetic yields, and that's going to take a lot of focus on getting those microbes really alive so that they process and cycle that food very quickly and efficiently. And so when someone says they're a good grower, it's not so much that they can keep 20 lights, 30 lights rolling along or anything like that. You like as long as you're as long as you're dedicated, you can finish a race. You don't have to be in first place to finish a race, right? Someone that tells me they like you get bring product up to me and they got stuff that's kind of very high, obviously very frosty, no PGRs in it. Yeah, now you've got my real respect here, because now you're showing me that you're running 20 lights and your shit's on point, and you're gonna find that, especially um, as you watch, not necessarily the craft growers that you'll find on social media. You're gonna find a lot of awesome ones out there, whether it be YouTube or Insta, or whatever. But there's definitely a lot of hype too. Keep in mind, just because someone's running a big ass operation doesn't mean it's going to be the very best stuff that can be produced. And so, with that also said, that doesn't mean that a particular brand of nutrient is going to give you the best yield. Uh, there's so many elements, and we've already found the bulk of them. They're pretty much all the ones that you want to use anyways. The ones we find now, we have to split atoms to find, and they have a very quick half life. They're usually very energy, blah 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 blah. Usually plutonium and shit like that past that, right? So we pretty much found out everything on the periodic table. Done deal, right? So the only thing you're gonna find is a couple things that we're going to go over now. The lower version of this will bullshit a little bit. So next time I do this video, I should have something set up right here so we get this whiteboard really in front of you. Make it easier to see for sure. Easier for me to write on too. We'll teach it like do it like a classroom, right? There's gonna be some of these I do purely right off the notebook. I might not even have the video up or whatever the hell, but we'll be going. That way I can just use pretty much like MS Paint and regular stream software to give you guys better production. And so, to get the ball rolling again, what we're going to do is we're going to pretty much talk about what's our goals here. And this isn't going to be pretty generic right off the rip. And I'm going to be doing like a more detailed one as it goes to particular methods of growing. But these all shade. You're gonna find this is like true with everything and growing, everything shades. So what's our goals in fertilizer? Right? What are we looking for in our nutrition? We're gonna talk about light a little bit in this aspect and a bit of CO2 as well. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna make a real easy diagram here. Nice easy triangle. We're going to put some brackets next to these, okay? Because these actually have something that we can kind of acronym or put another value onto to really help us understand. We'll get the blue marker out. So, here we go. This is how Grow literally works. There's light, food, and CO2. Okay? Let's see what these each have to do with each other. By putting ourselves basically into their shoes, right? So, what we need to look at light as work. CO2. Breathing. Fuel. And food is actually just there we go. Real easy. Light is work. Okay? Light is energy, yes, but like the plant needs the energy of light to do anything, right? You say that? It's because light's providing the workout. The more light I put onto the plant, the more work it's going to do, right? That's how it adds up. CO2, that is breathing to make fuel. And then food is just replacement and new parts for things that we need to make. That's it. So as long as I have enough light to make enough work for my plant to breathe and use food, I'm good. As long as I got enough food going in so that the plant can do work by making enough things, then we're good. If I got too much food, I can't really, doesn't matter if I can breathe really good because I don't have enough work going on to do anything with it. This is our goal, right? As a whole, we're trying to get close to this trinity. We want to be as tight as we can to it. The closer we are, the more it humps. And there's a lot of things, like this is basic, right? It's really, really important. It's something to always remember and like refocus on. But this is the tip right here. With this will easily put you ahead of at least half the people out there. Just understanding and knowing this. The more light I put on something, the more I'm going to yield, which means more plant mass. Right? More light spread over means more physical room that the plants occupy on a square foot level. But light can also mean how much space a plant occupies in a cubic foot level. How deep is the canopy? How many branches and all this other stuff? How many nodes? How tight do the nodes get? Right? Does it stretch hard? We can get into that too later. And the same with the food. Right? So in the organic food, it's harder to overfeed because the stuff always has to be broken down. There's only certain elements that are immediately or somewhat immediately available. Right? So there's more of a buffer there, and the bacteria do a lot of work, and the bacteria will take the hit a little bit. For synthetic, if I overstep, the plant's going to eat it like a goldfish. Right? Which also means on the positive side, though, if I'm doing it right, I'm going to see the results quick and I can fix something quick. But it'll also burn quick, right? And the same with the gas. The CO2 helps you bend the rules a little bit, you used to think. Or at least growers think. Right? They discover CO2, oh snap, I can feed more. Well, yeah. That was the limiting factor. You're giving it all the light that you could give it. You were giving it all the food you could. But you hadn't been giving it all the breathing it could up to this point. Right? So, again, we're looking at food specifically. So if we're looking at the food aspect out of this trinity, right, what do we want to really look at as far as food goes, right? And it's not that crazy, to be honest. And the cool part is, like, once you really got it down, it's not so much. Well, your brands play a part for sure, but what do my decisions on products really mean? What do I really get out of it? Right? We're talking about food. There's a lot of things out there to consider when we look at products. They're out of any industry that's ever lived. This industry in particular loves to market. You can feel the price to drop this so you can see the label better. But that's a cool looking bee. You can see the honeycomb in the background, the flowers, right? The drippy off the bee. It's like honey. You saw the fish ship bottle. It's got some attitude going on for sure. Really have it.
Place to the name High Shield. Right, everything's got a name. The gear, like some of the Botanicare stuff's not too flashy, right? It looks somewhat like industrial or something like that, I guess you could say. It's got some bell peppers on there, a colored name, and all that. Uh, right, pretty bog standard, nothing too crazy. Uh, GH does it a bit. This is like one of the oldest brands out. It is the first hobbyist brand out there, considered to be the originator, right? The three parts, like famous. If you've seen a three-part synthetic round, it's probably based off of this ratio. It comes from that company, the Grow Microphone. Mendo takes a little bit more of a planty look. They've got like some flashy ones like Quiet and Cool Bloom. Yeah, here we go. Some of the Fox Farm bloom enhancers, open sesame. Got the lady popping out of the flower there. She's got like a big old headdress dealy going on. And they got some other ones in there, right? But like the names too. They got some Mycos in here because I was transplanting that little plant. Mycos, oh shit. Pure mycorrhiza inoculant. Pure, fresh, and alive, boys. It's got the, oh shit. It's got the little view window. Even though I just poured out half of it, holy shit. Had to blow it off the keyboard. Holy smokes, that's not awesome. So, a lot of money spent on marketing. But what am I really trying to look at here? I mean, the bottles do look pretty, and that is cool. But if I'm me and I'm looking to make something put together, what am I really looking at for like a regimen that's going to give me not only like excellent yields, but also awesome flavor, production, and just overall like quality of grow. What's going to cover me from A to Z. What's not going to give me a whole lot of headaches. It's going to play pretty straight to the hip. We're going to want a combination then. We're going to want to mix with synthetic and organics. So like straight up, there's two ways to approach it. But I guess like we should really point that out because I totally worked with someone who does it quite successfully, having pretty much an inverse of what most people will do. And and so for our base, our goals are either we could do one of two things. We can have a synthetic base, or we can have an organic base. And both of these will work out fine. But with some caveats to it, right? So, let me write this off to another side. We can get some room to mess with it. So, we'll start with the organic base. The organic base, we focus on microbes, art, and supplement with targeted lower enhancements. Right? And you see, and this is becoming pretty similar to what we just wrote out. So if you got a synthetic base, we focus ppm ratio. And we'll get into that in a second here. Because we can get into more trouble this way, we have to keep a little bit more of an eye on what's going on. It's way easier to fry your plants using that PK bloom enhancer with the synthetic base than it is with an organic base. Which means a coworker that runs an organic base, what can he do? Well, you can pump the boost hard. And we can do that because our base nutrients in a lot of cases end up being a fair bulk of our ppms, or like what our food ends up making out. With organics, it won't always translate out to the ppm, but the bulk of the food that we're feeding in, if it's organic, then we can get away with the bigger boost because we haven't added so much synthetic P and K in here that we're giving it all a big shock all at once, right? I'm not adding 50-30 on top of something that's ratioed out to say 10-15 or like 8-12 or something. It ends up being in a lot of cases for phosphorus potassium. That's like a micro and a bloom added up or in a bloom formula, right? Usually something like 3-6-10, 3-7-10, 3-7-9, something like that. So if that's the case with our synthetics, we have to watch it because when we pop that, we're going to be a very high number. We're going to sit somewhere around 67, 70 or something like that. Wow. Right? So we have to be smart about what we're doing here. With this one, we haven't added a whole lot of high gravity P or K. Right? We're probably sitting around something like 5-7 or 5 phosphorus, 7 potassium, or 6-9, something way more mild that way. And this is also the culmination of stuff that's breaking down, right? So depending on how you shade your organics, we can even hit it harder with bird guano or something like that, and kind of push harder. We can add lanebonite, we can add soft rock phosphate, we can add stuff to this, have it all dink, 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 dink in line in terms of like how much gravity each one of these is going to push, right? The seabird guano doesn't push nearly as hard as the rock phosphate does when it's cooking, especially if you use something like GH's Ripen, which I think I need to still have another bottle of. Ripen the soft rock phosphate not only change your pH, but it punches quickly and hard, especially if you're using something like Rabbit P, which is something he definitely is worried about keeping very much alive and happy inside of the soil and reservoir, because that's starting to break down a lot of those organic compounds that's going to lead to its flower production, right? And so if he's smart about this, not only does he kind of map up his like organic flower enhancements, he can change out like his PK because of how much mammoth he's using, and truly use the PK by itself as just a gas pedal on throttle. So let's copy that down. Most of his flower food is organic. PK can be throttled, I guess. Right? Focus on microbes hard and supplement it with target flower enhancements such as bird guano, soft rock phosphate, lanebonite, powdered kelp, which comes in a high potassium, like 16 points or something like that, right? I think that's made by Technoflora. So since that's the case, this stuff's always been like in the sequence of breaking down. If I layer it right, it all breaks down at different times. It's not too rough. And at that point, I can pump the boost a little bit. because most of my flower foods are organic, the PK I can use it kind of like a gas pedal. At the key moments, I can really sock it hard and give it what it wants. It'll be used up, and when the plant's done with it, it's gone. This equates to a better quality at the end. It's easier to get the quality because my heavy gravity stuff isn't sitting around very long. It's being munched up quite rapidly because I put it in exactly when the plant needs it. So what do we do on the synthetic side? So we got to use tea and other organics to get our flavor, and really bigger. I wonder if that's really thought about much. I wonder if people that are running, like, say, the Athena 3 part and all that stuff, which works out great, but they're losing out on, like, we've seen it, if they're not prepared to use stuff like a tea or something like that, they're kind of hurting on the flavor there a little bit. Flour comes out a little bit generic-ish, and that's the battle you have when you're growing on a very big scale. Cost is a big thing, and repeatability and consistency are definitely another big thing that you have to consider out there. Yeah, in a lot of cases, you might have more than one person mixing up the barrel. And for a lot of these growers, they live by the 55-gallon rain barrel, right? And the Mondi sump pump. So you could have 3, 4 heads on a big grow mixing all the soup up, and the consistency might not be there. So slimming it down to a couple of products kind of helps that, but at the same time, with low cost, good shelf life, consistent nutrition, you're going to find that it's pretty much running on the rails. We don't have a very fancy looking like steam train, though. We've got a freighter train that pretty much lugs like cars full of coal along, right? It's there for production. So it's important to understand that in a lot of cases, all these foods work really great. It's just what's the goal of this stuff here? Who are they targeting this towards? And I agree, liquids, especially on a big grow scale, kind of hard to fuck with. You're going through a lot of material. The crap weighs a ton. And if you need a heap of it, yeah, you're investing in 15-gallon plus size bottles here. Fives are pretty much on a small warehouse scale. 5 and 6 gallons, you can run it there, but you're going to be going through them a little bit. Truly, though, you're probably looking at more like 15s. If you got a big operation, 15s are probably on the small end of the scale, and you're probably looking for bigger. And this is if it's all liquid nutrition. For most home gamers, though, if you're 1 to 2 lights, you're probably rocking around on quarts. Uh, but this isn't necessarily true. Depending on some brands' dilution levels and all that, you may be wanting to buy gallons of some products. I think for most people, inside their house or something like that, you're probably somewhere around like 2.5 gallon or 5 gallon containers. And I don't have a 5.5 in the flower room right now, but I do have 2.5. So you can keep like larger batches of nutrients cold so they stay outside of the room. Your goal really is to find, as far as your purchasing of sizes and everything, should consider how much of something do I need and how much of something do I not need. Because the feed ratios on all this stuff can widely vary. Whereas something like the cover side like I had, this is a half milliliter per gallon. you don't use very much of this at all. CalMag though, that's 5 mils a gallon, as the label suggests. And if I'm looking at those bases that I had down there, it's looking somewhere between 5 to 15 milliliters per gallon, depending on which bottle and what time of the grow cycle it is. So with that said, what we're really trying to do, first and foremost, is really look at the usage rates of everything and balance that with the time that you're going to be having it on your hands. As a rule of general practice, even if it's synthetic, I'm not really trying to hold on to a bottle of nutrient for more than a year. In the case of flora nectar sweeteners, I really don't want to have it more than 2 grows. I'd love to have it done by 1 grow. Just because it has organic it does have sugars in it, and it will go bad. And it has gone bad. I mean, it has gone bad on other people. So those kind of products, I buy smaller bottles of because I want to go through it a little bit, and the price isn't too bad on it, so I'm not too worried. And that's basically the genesis of how it works up and down the line. With my bases, I mostly have gallons of my micro and my bloom, but I have quarts of the grow, and it makes sense. I spend way less time in the grow cycle than I obviously do in the bloom. 3 to 4 weeks in grow, and then we're off to bloom for 8. Right? So I'm spending twice the amount of time and twice the amount of food in bloom than I am in grow. So I buy quarts of grow. So every 2 grows, the synthetic base is empty-ish, or maybe 1.5. It's great for a low price of like $18 before a discount. That's not bad. Some of the stuff you just don't use a whole lot through the whole cycle. The avalanche again probably goes in only the last 2 weeks of flower. And it's at 7 mils I suggest the first time, and then 10 after. Yeah, you're not using too much of this for very long. Bud igniter from Advanced Nutrients is like 1 to 2 weeks. And it's not very much per gallon. So you don't need much of it. They sell it in small little bottles, and that's great. Because for most people, those small 8-ounce bottles will last them 2, 3 grows, and that's awesome because that does have organic compounds in it. So stuff with organic compounds, I'm trying to kind of use and get rid of, you know. I don't want to give them the time for them to go bad because if they do go bad, I can't use them anyways, right? So I'd rather it get used up and still in good condition than me sit on extra and at some point it goes sour. So now that we know what we're kind of looking for sizes, you're going to find that liquid bases you use more. They're also a little bit more expensive because they have so much water in them. They've been chemistryed up so they don't react to each other so badly. Or don't react to each other, I should say, but like the dries are easier to keep. So as far as the liquids and dries goes, what you're getting out of the dries is you're getting low cost, high concentration, right in consistency. What you're not getting with it is like all the niche stuff. It's also harder to dose because small bits mean a whole lot and they can make up a whole lot of ppm. There's other stuff that's more mild mannered, like veg bloom's not so bad. It's got a decent punch to it though, so you go under the belt, under the feed rate a little bit, you come up it, and then a little bit over it. But at 1 can, it kind of limits you. It's usually a little bit nitrogen hot for some people, especially in flower. So when we're buying food and we've got different options basically on the synthetic one we're going to look at is chemistry and fertilizer is also a about getting along. You know what I mean? We're playing chemistry inside this bottle. We want all these elements to play nice with each other, right? So we want everything in this bottle that we dump in to make this grow, this bloom, this micro, this milkshake, whatever, our floral blend, our sweetener, is that chemistry and fertilizer is all about getting along. All the elements in that bottle have to play nice with each other. Because if they don't play nice, that's called a reaction. Right? And you already heard it, with their reaction is the equal and opposite reaction. That's physics, yo. So, if reaction occurs, reaction happens, change happens. Also, this is why we don't mix nukes concentrate together. And this is because the best we can do is we can't assume who's using what or how much of it, what their source water is like, or anything like that. Like, there's too many variables. If reaction happens, change happens. Right? If there's two chemicals, three chemicals in something, and they react to each other, they create something. Whether it's gas in liquid or gas in another compound in a liquid form happens both. It could be hydrogen gas, and we get something else, but we don't know what else is. We also lost whatever made the hydrogen gas. That's gone now. Right? So if we've ever had silica last into the reservoir, we say, well, it turns all ugly, and then get this nasty junk all in the bottom of the res. Yeah. Now you made that goop. That plant can't do anything with that goop, nor with anything that reacted to it probably. That's just gone now. Right? So that's why we also have to say you want to add your silicas first because they fall out so easy. So we don't want anything changed inside the chemistry of the stuff because, well, it's different from what we're putting in. It's different from our intent. It's going to change our ratios. And what we're feeding is not what we're actually going to get out of the food. It can be detrimental. It could be, okay. But repeatedly, it will be to the detriment of the plant. We can't say that for sure it would just keel over, but it could have pretty much a rough time. So the whole goal for these chemists that work for these nutrient companies putting these hours is, if it's a one-part system, two-part, three-part, whatever, the end goal is for this fertilizer, whatever's in this bottle or set of bottles for our base, is for everything in that bottle set to play cool with each other within each individual bottle. And it's only when we dilute everything else out that everything can also coexist inside this water without reacting, or not reacting badly, right? Maybe not too much work there. With that said, the amount of work it takes to make each one causes each one to play differently. And so we'll look at, like, say, one part, two part, three parts here. And we'll look at, say, we want to say two parts What do we mean by that? We mean like just two bottles, or is that Grow AB and Bloom AB? There's both sides of that, and I've heard like one part here called Grow Bloom. But you also have to factor in for stuff that is truly one singular part, like one that's from whole both nutrients or Veg plus Bloom. Because also Jack's Classic was really popular, right? And that was just one bag. Uh, so I could probably fit all three on here. We'll see what's up. So it's one part. My choices, and this is from a chemist kind of standpoint, are dominated. Your choices are dominated by compatibility to each other. So that's like a big factor that, like, sure, this is going to be stuff that the plant can consume. But before ease of consumption is even put into the mix, we have to first worry about making sure everything in this bottle is cool with everybody. Because we're not just working in, like, say, a grow kind of like focused bottle or a bloom focused one. No, this is going to be like everything, and it's expected to cover the ass of like everything this plant needs, right? Like everything. So with that said, we suffer and lose in a way that now we'll show that up. So my choices are dominated by compatibility to each other. I got to make sure all those compounds in there play nice with each other. Don't lock out. Don't turn into brick salt while it's in the bag. I'm also hoping for the fact that it won't cake together too bad. This and that. We also lose our uh, potential element variants or compounds that just work out to be more favorable, right? The pH, the uptake, the stage breakdown is more favorable. Maybe I get a couple different forms of potassium and phosphorus in there that break down at different rates, or I come up to an end goal of gravity that's the number itself that is more shaded to a ratio I want. I'm not stuck at 50-30. I can have 15-13. I can have 30-20. I can have 22-10. What's up? Right? So I can kind of customize that actual ratio right there to something that's probably more in line to whatever I'm growing, in this case cannabis, of course. Right? So with that, we're really just limited on basically the full breadth of compounds that would be available to us if we could just separate a few things. If we could just take some of this stuff out and put it into a second bottle, we could be a little bit more pickier on which forms of nitrogen that we put in, on the phosphorus, on the potassium, all of it. We would be a little bit more picky, right? And so we'll get into that. And so I'm gonna do like just a straight two part, like a grow bloom one, because you're gonna find that like the two bottle or the four bottle two part just kind of expands on what the traditional three part's all about. two-part bloom. We're looking at being 450 on compound. Because of that, I can get more favorable ratios. Get better shelf life. Better quality. We'll get into why that is. We'll put an asterisk next to that one. What else do we got when we're using the two-part? Generally speaking. pH isn't a big diet. pH size is less. There's more overall, less food. Um, the forms of it don't have to be odd gravities. Things can be more soluble. And what we get out of it is we start getting control. So, two-part, what do I get? I can be more picky on the compounds, right? Because I have a lot of these elements and compounds split up between a grow and a bloom now. So I have to have all the grow stuff in the bloom, and the bloom stuff's not in the grow. So with that, the ratios that I can get stuff at, the numbers 326 or something like that, it's easier to do because I have more options. I can use more things to get that number, and I can control basically the breakdown better, right? Like we said with the other stuff, the staggered breakdown. I get better shelf life because I have less of a chance of stuff reacting to each other over time. I get better quality. I get better quality because at the end of flower, the thing's not caked full of nitrogen or something like that. Right? It's not too much boom right off the beginning of veg. Where if you're a new grower, you crisp them up and you spend weeks trying to like regather them and get them to rebound. And like, no, this is a smoother takeoff and everything. Right? And because it's more picky, I get stuff that gets into the plant that the plant likes better. The pH doesn't dive as much too, and that's part of like the better quality thing. When my sources are better, the pH doesn't fluctuate so dang hard when it starts to eat the stuff out of it. Right? And then when I am putting it into the water to mix it up, the pH isn't just booming down the 4 right off the bat. Right? Because I'm adding food to it, it's going to be a gradual process of it going down. And then out of that, I obviously get more control. I get more control of that because I can feather up and down how much of each one of those I feed. Early in veg, I can go lighter, and I can kind of scale it up as the plants get bigger, as the wider the light gets bigger. And then when I start to go into flower, I can even do things like take down a little bit of grow and add a little bit of bloom to the mix, and shade both of them into the reservoir. And as I go through the transition, I can like pretty much smooth out all the way to bloom, and I can take out other things to take out the nitrogen, take out the calcium and whatnot as we go along. So I get a little, you can see I'm getting more control just because I've separated things up a little bit. And that's why if you were like, say a company like Advanced Nutrients gets it rough because they have so many dang bottles and it can be frustrating and I even bark about it a little bit. But it's not unjustly so. Because of what we're breaking down here, they've got bottles dedicated for specific weeks, not even full cycle or half cycle. The stuff that you might even just use for 2 weeks and that's it. But that's basically what you're getting out of that company as an experience. You're getting a situation where the company is totally dedicated to product and product research to get you covered for each week, basically, right? They want it really tailored and really ratioed out to be perfect every single week for you. Whereas some of the other brands that don't have as many products or like that are built like that, you don't have so much of that granular control, but you do have the ease of pocket, and you do have the ease of mixing up and less fucking inventory to deal with. There's a lot of ways around it. So, the last one we're going to get to, I'm going to kind of condense into 2 chunks. Yeah, it's going to be 3-part and 2-bottle AB. So 3-part and Grow Bloom. For each one is 2 bottles, right? So we got Grow AB and Bloom AB, right? So that's 4 bottles. So I might as well just write it like that, straight up 4 bottles. I should probably use the recipe instead of taking So what do we get out of 3-part? Well, it expands from the 2-part, basically. Now, I'm really choosing. I'm really choosing elements. You get great sources like the elements that are available to you when you're using 3-part expands because again, you've done broken down 2 bottles into 3 bottles where I can put in most cases micro contains basically your calcium, your iron, your copper, your moly, boron, zinc, nitro, and it's like the deal. Micro contains most of that. There's other stuff in it, but for the most part, you're looking at iron, copper, molybdenum, boron, zinc, nitrogen. And that's about it, right? Other minerals and shit like that. What I'm getting out of my bloom, my grow, which is funny, you'll see the micro is usually like 501, something like that. Right? And then we'll get to our grow, which I'll use mine in this case. Is like my grow is like a 224. And when we look at it, what are we getting out of it? It's not so much that there's just like less nitrogen in it. There's like more forms of nitrogen. I got like 3 forms of, of nitrogen in my grow. There's straight up 3 forms of nitrogen versus my micro that had 1 form, and that was calcium nitrate. Right? So my micro basically got my calcium and my nitrogen out of 1 single form there. And when I'm looking at the rest of this stuff here, I'm also getting salt, sulfur. Bag. This one also has, we'll put it on there too. Put it on the So when I get on my grow. So my micro has 5 points of nitrogen. The bulk of it really is just calcium nitrate aside from the minerals and junk, right? As far as the NPK is concerned, bulk of it's coming from pretty much this. It might have some variants along with it, but this is your bulk. Now my grow though, I got 3 different forms of nitrogen, so even though it's a lower number, the plant can easily take up most of that nitrogen because it comes in many varied forms. This has the bang on it now, right? So if this is ever not enough, just straight up nitrogen, I can bump this up a little bit, and I get a great reaction out of veg because it wants the calcium and the nitrogen at that time, right? It grows there just to provide everything else on the generic scale. And we're talking about stuff like magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, kelp in this case. And that's the over thing of the grow, right? It's providing everything that's not the minerals that has to do with grow. And a readily available set of nitrogen that'll supplement this. And so you see like how complicated it got all of a sudden. We just added one more bottle to it. Now we're looking at really getting different elements into different categories and placing them where we like them. So we're going to see a lot of times the grows do focus the N and the K, the potassium and the nitrogen. And so my bloom, mine's a little bit different on the kind series than a lot of different ones. But what do we get out of it? Well, at the same time, obviously a big thing on that is going to be the phos and the potash. But we're also looking at, again, magnesium. You're going to find magnesium hiding out everywhere. That boy helps with photosynthesis, and when we help the magnesium, we help the green come back without having to use nitrogen or calcium. It's great, right? We don't want to feed heavy nitrogen in flour because we're going to get the foxtail out, and we don't want that. Calcium, just the plant doesn't need it that late, right? It just falls off the board. So what we're really getting out of that out of the bloom now is we're getting a lot more phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, sulfur, and we're getting it again. And it will vary from brand to brand. But in this case, with our bloom, it's just like the grow. Phosphorus, potassium, we're getting those in varied and many different forms. So again, with all the heavy lifting that the bottle has to do between the grow and the bloom is all provided in the amounts that it needs. If it needed more phosphorus and potassium, we could easily go up on the bloom. Conversely, we can also come down on the micro when it becomes to be too much calcium and nitrogen. Too much calcium and nitrogen in flour, I come off the micro a little bit, pump the bloom. We don't want to do it too much though because the micro contains all of our minerals. And this is one of the big reasons I use Botanicare kind. They put the minerals inside the grow and the bloom instead of the micro. That leaves the micro as straight up nitrogen and calcium to be used as a throttle. I'll talk about that line at a later time, and I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation. So that's what we're getting out of our bases now, right? So 3-part, and then the 4-bottle 2-part. I'm really just separating things into different bottles so that at that point I can use forms of nutrition that the plant likes to take up better than in places where I'm forced to get everything in there chemically wise to play together as a major consideration just as much as how much the plant's going to like them. The more I focus on forms that the plant likes to take, obviously the better output I'm going to get from the plant, potentially. And I say potentially because the food is obviously, like as you mentioned earlier, only one side of the whole trinity. And that's even taking it, not even taking into consideration our own input, which will greatly influence the plant's output. Our input plays a gigantic amount of influence on what the plant will do. It is perhaps one of the most underserved and underthought of aspects in grow, and while that's obviously an overt exaggeration, it just points out how critical I believe in it and how much I feel that it's an aspect of gardening that they need to really work on and look at because uh, for them it's basically the deal breaker for the grows right now as to why they don't have what they want out of them. By training alone, I can change the yield of the plant. I'm not saying it's not the food. um, and like it is the light, it really is. It directly correlates, like you saw on the chart. Um, but the thing to consider there, from a different focus, is that the light is now pretty much even playing field, right? The 1,000 watt light has been out for decades, and it's still the gold standard as far as yield goes. I was listening to a podcast today where it's like 1,000 watt lamp has put out 1750 micromoles, and that's been pretty much the goal of every LED manufacturer out there that's trying to swing for a direct replacement is hitting that 1,750 micromoles and either channeling it into a bar setup that looks kind of like the fluorescent fixture with all the 8 bars on it or something like that, or you got the ones that really compile all the LED mass right into a smaller footprint so that the intensity is much higher, much more like a double-ended light fixture like a Gavita or a Phantom or something like that. And both require totally two different styles of growing. I need a drink for sure. That's what's up, though. Glad to see you 313. And this is gonna be like you can watch it later too, right? After the stream is done, you can go back over it and all that. So now that we've discussed basically the varieties of synthetic-based nutrition out there, I'll go through quickly through a checklist because it's getting a little bit late here. What are we at? 3 o'clock already.
3 a.m.
I got work in the morning, of course. So as far as I'm going here, like if you're talking to me and we're putting the food chart together, and you're like, what are you doing here? You're putting one together, and I don't really care about brand here. It won't matter too much. Like if I'm putting together like a regimen, it's gonna be a 2 or 3 part. Sin, right? So this is just about like 90% of the brands out there, so it shouldn't be too hard. There's Dynagrow, there's Heavy, there's GH, there's CES, there's Humboldt County Zone, there's Touchmist, there's Micro, there's like so many brands out there, right? Wow. And makes like all of them, GH makes all of them, Dynagrow makes all of the flavors of 3, 2, and 1 part, and all that shit. Wow. That's how big this industry's gotten. It's gigantic. So separate base, I'm going to have that. I want a CalMag. I'm not too particularly on brands, but I can tell you Botanicare, CalMag Plus, no particular reason. I used to recommend Cali Magic, but it has part of its compound makeup is glucoheptanate, and that can slow down microbe growth. Not a problem for the mouth, brother. So I tend to like look elsewhere now instead to get CalMag because I don't want that glucoheptanate because I do feed microbes in my media growth, and I do not want that inhibited. Same you could even say on hydro. I haven't really looked into like if it was glomus this inhibits or whatever, but I use HydroGuard in my hydro systems for the bacillus to protect my roots and all that. And if the glucoheptanate is gonna damper that action, I don't like that. So for me now, it should be something like CalMag Plus. If you run the dries, you might really like Stack Swell from Vegetable. That's a nice one. And everyone has got gluco in it too. So really, yeah, CalMag Plus then, huh? On top of that, on pasture bases, we're gonna want like a tea deal. So for me, that's like pure blend tea. That's from Botanic Care. You could use Flora Blend, Flora Plus. I don't know Flora Plus also gets into it. And then there's something on top of tea too. We call it a tonic. Straight up tonic. So tonic, maybe like Karma, uh, Emerald Goddess. Rich Gold, not Rich Gold, Flora Plus. And yeah, for a root enhancer, looking at Rapid Start, that's probably the one I recommend the most. But you lose some top growth there. There's also Rhizoblast, Botanic Care. Not terrible. These companies are the same now. Regenerate's great. That one doesn't use hormones. Uh, and so for regular microbes, we're talking about recharge. Great way if you dig it over the recharge rate. I'm not trying to use both of these. Probably one or the other. Um, Let me do use microbes on transfer. Right, and as I get done with this, we'll go through them all too. So I also use some PK microbes. That's going to be obviously mammoth. Yeah. That's mammoth P right there, and that's made up of beneficial microbes. They're, I can peel the label open to show you here. Stuck in my hand. There we go. This isn't your glomus, not your grandpa's glomus, not your grandpa's petita, not your grandpa's sweating on us, Cinnabacter and all that, right? So these are microbes that specifically work on phosphorus and potassium, and that's magnified if that phosphorus or potassium is from an organic source. So I'm like, great way to recharge and stuff. These microbes will break down those specific elements, phosphorus in particular, much more rapidly than your great white or your rechargeable. So we got a PK boost. Well, I like shine. If you're doing a media, liquid cool blow, dry cool blow, aloe, or ripen from GH. And I'll use dry cool bloom and ripen. It's going to be one or the other there for my finisher. PK Boost is obviously going to bring us a lot of smalls, phosphorus and potassium. And in a good one, you're going to find more than monopotassium phosphate in it. Hopefully with a decent one. I mean, you're going to have monopotassium in it. Hopefully, like this one from GH the Cool Bloom, you're getting dipotassium phosphate, magnesium phosphate, monopotassium phosphate, and potassium sulfate. You might see stuff like potassium hydroxide, stuff like that. And those are from other brands that are trying to do the same thing, give you multiple forms of phosphorus and potassium, and a ratio they feel is going to be working great with the rest of their brand. But that said, there's nothing from stopping you from, like in my case, using this general hydroponic set of flower enhancer between like the liquid cool bloom and the ripen. That's GH, and my base is a Botanicare. That's totally fine. We're hunting for specific ratios and cost effectiveness that work great for us. Uh, this is probably like the bulk of it. So if we want, we can say I don't use pack of Utah, but I do use. I got it right here. Mendo Avalanche. And so Mendo Avalanche is basically kelp and alfalfa. Uh, and alfalfa helps tighten up the flowers. And it helps get good note stacking. So especially get this as a spray when you go into your transition onto the plant, and you'll get great response that way. Which is another deal there, kelp and humic acid. There's many ways we can get these compounds or in some of these products into the plant quicker than just feeding them in. We could totally spray some of this stuff on, not all of it, but there's a couple things here we can spray on to get a real big response out of the plant. I don't do sweet efforts, right? We need sweet before the flushing of that. And so right below that too, below sweetener we have carbs because while the sweetener can act as the carbs, we can definitely put carbs in there and get a better response out of it. So my sweetener is magnesium salt. There we go. Here's my sweetener, sour D. I've used Core Nectar, Botanicare Sweet on a lot of the other ones in the past. But the big basic thing about my sweetener is it's going to be a magnesium sulfur supplement. You're going to get a little bit of potassium there. It's usually because it's made out of potassium sulfate as the main ingredient. You also usually get like dextrose or sucrose as the official listed ingredient. Like this one is listed as 2% sucrose from evaporated cane juice and molasses, and definitely got some like an appley smell to it, which can also be part of marketing. You can get these in a lot of different flavors. Yeah, it definitely has more than just cane and molasses in there. Mm. Definitely got an apple deal going on. So there could be a lot of these will have like a fruit kind of enhancement to it. the thought is honestly that those fruit juices, the fruit sugars are easier to break down than say a processed kind of sugar. So on top of that, we got carbs, and so that can be for me it's honey and BS. We had the Mendo honey, which is a nice one. And you're gonna find these carbs also bring something to uh, the show with them, and it's not just straight carbs that you're getting out of it. You're getting a little bit of extra there, and that's for the most part for me. That's about the hot list there. And it wants to say flush, use a flush. I'm not too picky up right now. Not too picky at all. I don't care if it's water clean, Clear flawless finish, or any of the millions that are out there. Someone tell you use a product that you already have in the lineup, like in the case of Heavy 16, they'll tell you go ahead and just use the Prime, or is it the Cleanse? I can't remember. It might be the Cleanse. Um, in the case of and the Roots Organics, they'll tell you use the Trinity to flush with. Maybe their humic acid stuff. And I did forget one thing that keeps eating out of my brain, and I can't believe it. What was it? Oh yeah, couple there. Yeah, resin producer, cellulate tripinator. That was Butt Factor X. Snowstorm. Ice Shield, and we'll go over how those work. We'll go through that. And I think that's about the bulk of it. If we get something else, we just think that the way she goes there. But that's about it. And that's going through the cards and all that. Well, let's go over it. We got a lot here. We got a lot written down, don't we? So I got 2 or 3 synthetic. This is going to make me like a good quality start on my base food. I can just get that knocked out of the way. And when I got a base like this, I can focus on just giving it just enough of the base where it gets all the minerals. And then I can focus on these bits to use them like levers. It's not something I'm just dumping in there to make ppms go up. I'm going to be specific and strategic about when I'm adding these things and how much of it I'm dumping in there. So past that, a CalMag, like we were talking about, CalMag, it could be, it's pretty much like a standard kind of deal. Cannabis really loves this stuff. It's going to make the flesh and all that other stuff out of for your plant. So it's going to be a big deal all the way up until the moment this plant stops stretching. At that point, the plant really doesn't need too much calcium, and it starts wanting more of the magnesium anyway. So we're going to switch over to focus on our sweetener, basically, that's going to give us the magnesium we're looking for, and we can kind of pump that to meet a level that we need. Tea is going to help us bring the flavor, right? And so it's going to be like some sort of tea compound. Whereas Pure Blend tea from Botanicare, which is more runny, like a finished product tea. Flora Blend that's more milkshakey, or Flora Plus, that's again more like a Pure Blend tea or a liquid karma. Uh, and then that leads into like a plant tonic, right? Because these two accomplish 2 different things. Whereas these ones focus on plant health and providing for, like, say, soil microbes and everything as well. The tea is like pretty much soil microbe food. You get a little bit of bird and bat going on it, so you get flavor time, but that's really like micro breakdown. This one's doing extra things. Your root inoculant or your root supplements, these are more like accelerators. These help the plant make more roots, and is different from microbes entirely. These help assist protect the roots, These ones help the plant make more roots quickly. So that's stuff like Rapid Start, Rhizoblast, Roots Accelerator, Gold, and there's some other ones out there as well. But most of these are going to have like willow bark, barley extract, sea kelp, and stuff like that inside of them. For my actual recharge, or I mean, my actual recharge, because that's the one I use. My actual microbes, though, these are going to be my mycorrhiza, basically my fungus, my bacillus, my bacteria, things like that. And these are going to help colonize the root zone and the soil itself, help break down food, and protect it from predators and other bad microbes. And so that leads into, like we talked about, the PK microbe, and that's going to be mammoth P, so that it helps break down the phosphorus and potassium. For my BK boost, in a lot of cases, I'm using Shine, Liquid Cool Bloom, Dry Cool Bloom on the laters, or I'm just going to use GH's Ripen instead of Dry Cool Bloom on the end. So I want to start like the first half of middle bloom, so that's going to be like, say, week 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to be Liquid Cool Bloom, and then 7, 8, I'm going with the Ripen or the Dry Cool Bloom because of the ratio change and the way it burns. Flower tightener, I'm using Mendocino Avalanche. And that's going to be basically alfalfa meal and kelp that I'm trying to spray through transition, and then feed into the plant late in its life to help get those flowers to pull together a little bit. And that's made from tricantanol from alfalfa meal. That's totally safe. Sweetener is a myriad amount there, but we're really looking for the magnesium and the sulfur. And we're going to use this bottle as the gas pedal to get a greenback without having to use stuff like CalMag or my micro or anything like that. I can use my sweetener to help get the greenback into the plant in the middle of the flower when it really needs it. Remember, it's using more of this to do a lot of other things than sunflower. Magnesium is used all over the place, not just for like photosynthesis, genesis. So from actual carbs themselves, this would be like my sugars to feed the plant or feed the microbes. I'm using something like honey, yes, or Mendo honey, something along those lines, because aside from getting like stuff like molasses or honey or something like that out of the deal, I'm also usually getting like volcanic bits or clay out of the deal. That's going to help further microbes break down all those carbohydrates as well as import some more flavors. Then after that, we get into our resin producers. And so as far as resin producers go, we got Turkinator, we've got Bud Factor X when it was out, Snowstorm Ultra, and High Shield. There's a few other ones out there, but they all work on the premise of the same thing. Kaizen helps elicit a defensive reaction in plants. And so, in the case of cannabis, we're looking at more resin production. And so, if you're spraying and or feeding these things, the plant will totally think the bugs are on it, and as a defensive mechanism, it will activate its systemic active resistance, which includes resin production and mineral defense against stuff. And flush, I don't care which kind of flush you use, but please use a flush. Use a lot. Use it to bind up all that food. Don't that plant turn yellow. That's the name of the game when we get to the end of the whole crop is we're trying to basically yellow the plant out. And we don't want to do it too early or too abruptly, right? We're not trying to mutilate the plant here. We're just trying to land the plane, man. We're trying to land the plane. We're trying to hit the brakes. If we can get up to the red light and we work the brakes right, we're going to come to a smooth stop. And that's what our goal is. We'd love to get to a flush where the last day of flush we can just back them down after a week straight, right? 7 days, boom, plant turns yellow, chop her down, boys. That's the goal. But it takes practice and time, and even for the best growers, you'll often find those crops where they totally overshoot and they think it's still green when it's time to go. And so they take some extra time, usually an extra week, to get that to really fade out for them. But that's it in a nutshell. That's what I kind of look at what I'm using. You're just looking to cover bases. You need the base because it's the foundation of your house. The CalMag is going to help you make all the flesh, leaves, and branches and everything like that. accelerators and stuff to help get your roots to proliferate quickly. The microbes help protect and feed the roots. PK for the microbes help create more PK. PK helps to boost the flowers. Tightener helps tighten them. The sweetener helps give the flowers the taste right, and that's because of the sulfur. And the magnesium helps preserve the green when they're in flower. Carbohydrates feed the microbes. We're using stuff in those carbs that are organic compounds that are included with those products. Where it's more like clay or volcanic ash, those added minerals or compounds help produce better flavor, and the microbes like to grow on them and around them. And stuff like terpinator, snowstorm resonator, shit like that, because it helps you activate a response in the plant to produce resin. Right? Everything's explainable and has a particular job. So we're looking at the base, the CalMag, the T, the tonic, the roots, and the microbes are pretty much the only thing that go in the veg. Whereas the base, the T, the tonic, the microbes, the PK boost, the tightener, the sweetener, and the resin go in for flour. So it's not like I'm using everything all the time, and even the ones that can PK boost, I don't use that for a bit. When I hit flour, I usually wait 2 to 3 weeks to even touch the flour booster. And like I said, with the tightener, you're spraying it once or twice while you go through transitions, and then feed it in late. And so with a lot of stuff like the root stuff, yeah, it doesn't go on the flour because once the canopy stops growing, so do the roots. So really just trying to have a socket, a screwdriver, a hammer, a drill. We basically want a basic tool set. So if someone came into your shop and we were growing plants at this shop, so to speak, this grow room, I've got a ratchet, I've got a socket, I've got a screwdriver for every nut, bolt, and assembly on the thing. And if I use these on this list, I pretty much got all my bases covered, and I can grow a plant to its peak without adding anything else to it. And I can definitely slim this down even to just right around, like, say, 4 or 5 products, and you can still have a fire crop out of it. But these are all just tools that help achieve something that are just more precise than using less tools. But that said, there's obviously a whole lot more to go into, and without a doubt, we're going to be breaking some of these things down into smaller bits and chunks, and we will definitely go through, say, the grow section of food versus the flower section of food. Just focus entirely on the grow section and spend a couple hours doing that. And then we'll spend another block of time on another day just focusing on the flower food, and then hopefully the third block where we just dedicate our time to basically root stuff, whether that's root accelerants, root inoculants, things of that nature, root cleaners. And then fourth block, I'd imagine we're going to also do something like, say, a foliar block where we talk about what we can actually foliar feed onto the plant to feed it as well. And there's a lot of tricks that we can do with that as well. Whether they be clones, mothers, troubled plants, or just super vigorous plants. There's also sprays that help get female seeds to propagate by forcing flowers of the opposite sex to show up on a plant. There's obviously all kinds of insecticides, fungicides, and all that stuff that we'll get into. But to give you guys kind of like a teaser on how it's being planned out here going forward, as far as those blocks go, we are definitely going to spend, I don't know how I'm going to order these might just be all different orders. The veg grow seminar, and we'll do flower stuff. 3, do roots seminar. do a foliar. And then lighting seminar. Here's usually the next five listed on episodes. I don't know if they're going to go exactly in this order. We might do the roots first, then the beds and flower. The foliar could go up, but I definitely think the lighting's going to be on the bottom part of that because we've already dove into the food, so we might as well finish out the fertilizer and then work out from there. So at least we'll finish the topic, right? And so after we talk about lighting, we'll talk about media. Or it might become ahead, you know what I mean? This might go over here, or even more up there. You know, before, put it before the foliar, and have roots full or roots media foliar lighting, or might even put media right at the top, right? When we look at it, the media is basically the frame of the car here. It's going to dictate basically what we do as far as our feed goes. So we might end up talking about media right next episode since we just really got into the basics of stuff and we haven't really um pushed into the specifics about vegetable flour. So we got time and opportunity to expand on that. Past that, and then yeah, we're definitely going to get into stuff like environment as well. And we'll see how that kind of pans out too, because we're going to find that environment is a lot to do with everything here, like just about everything. And then especially for the new ones out there, we'll look at cost. Cost and reality. And so by cost and reality, I'm not just talking about the cost of lighting, the cost of electricity, the cost of dehumidification and air conditioning and all that. But also the realities of what you hear, what you're told, and especially about what you're told about what you're looking at. There's a lot of caveats that go into what you're looking at when it goes as far as like buddies, grows, and videos and all that stuff. So that's a big topic to hit for sure. Not even go into like pipe logistics, all kinds of things there. But we'll expand on that for sure. Tips and tricks and all this other kind of stuff, obviously, self-included there. Um, Depending on the time that I have free, we'll probably even start getting into like actual grow diaries or something. But as a far bit away off from being 100 with you. Definitely a busy guy, so I'm not sure how much I can. How much I can guarantee that way, right? So if I can't keep up with it, I don't want to push that into the mix without me being able to do it correctly and doing it right and how I want to, with a lot of detail and all that. Another thing to add to it now that I'm thinking, shit, we better start talking about grow room design as well. That's going to be on another future episode there, and we'll kind of figure out where along the lines of everything should be segmented out. And I imagine as this goes along and gets better, when I turn this all into a playlist, I can put it into any order I want to better fit you guys there. So, I look at things to come. We're definitely going to do a veg or a grow seminar, flower seminar, roots, foliar, lighting, media, environment, cost and reality, and room design itself, and theory. So I'll write theory on there because that's a good little tag to put on with that. So we're talking about theory. We're talking about like how we lighting, what kind of lighting we're using, how much of it, how many plants that we put underneath each light, how big each plant gets, our yield goals, CO2, and how like everything ties together when we're trying to basically put one of these together, right? There's a lot that goes to putting into a grow room, but it should be incredibly hard to set one up once you know what you're doing. Once you got one of these kind of humming along for a couple of years, you should totally be able to throw one together in your mind fairly quickly. It shouldn't take you hours. It should take you to basically a basic idea of what you should be doing and kind of looking for. I wouldn't expect you to have like your complete dehumidification and everything figured out right from rip. Um, but if you put together something of similar size, it shouldn't take too much work for you to put another one together. You should kind of have your shit down. There's definitely room for growth. It's not going to be perfect right off the beginning, and it goes for not only your crops but your grow room itself. Um, I guess what you probably don't hear too much is that um, many grow rooms go through many iterations, and I've probably put this room together and changed it around 2 or 3 times already, and I've only been in here for about a year or two. And prior to that, at my old house, I probably redesigned that room about 5 or 6 times. Definitely appreciate you stopping through, brother. Get excited for things to change in your grow room. You should. Um, it's not very often once you really start getting rolling that you get to make a big change or do something new. A lot of times you're prone to being a creature of habit because of results, and it's hard to like argue with that, right? Results speak for themselves. So with that said, um, this is a process, and while you're growing plants, you're growing as a grower, and the goal is within, say, a couple years, you'll have not really just the raw output knowledge, but rather you'll have. I'd rather you not know a shit ton about everything, but if you know the basics damn well, you'll be so much better off long term having learned them right from the start and really being hungry about that than trying to figure out later when your money is more wrapped up into these things. When you get really wrapped up financially into all this, obviously things have to they have to work. If things aren't working, then you're having big troubles because you spent big money and so I mean you gotta at least break even, right? At the very at the very least, I got the camera cords everywhere. But no, you're looking to at least break even on all this. And obviously, you're not trying to break even; you're trying to be ahead on it. And whether you're just a home gamer that's looking to supplement and cut down on the cost of your own consumption, and you're looking into basically uh, paying for the cost to grow it, and the better you grow it, the more you're going to get per dollar of it, and the quality of it's going to be better. Uh, so if you're growing A1 at home, it's obviously way cheaper than going in and having to buy it. Um, and this folk can have good stuff sometimes, and so it's still just a reality. It's cheaper to grow at home, but you have to be able to match up or do better, obviously. Uh, Past that, all right, if you are production, then all of a sudden the cost matters a whole lot more, and so you're trying to do it right. Uh, but even then, I'd say it really behooves you to really learn your basics and get your shit down. Uh, I've seen a lot. I've had people sell their gas stations to start up warehouses, fully furnish them off that sale price, and fail, fail, just straight up lose all their money. Uh,
It's unfortunate as hell, but those people that uh, weren't even looking to run before they walk, they were trying to learn how to be Olympic sprinters before they even learned how to walk or crawl. Um, it works for some, it doesn't work for others. So um, the one thing I can control personally as the grower is to really be on point with my shit, to know what's going on and always be looking to learn more, and having my head wrapped around things and understanding what's happening. Bad things might still happen, but at least I'm better able to react to all that and in the end come up with way more successes than failures, right? In the end, this is farming, this is nature, so shit does happen. But it's half of that battle there is definitely putting yourself into position to succeed, whether that's keeping your integrated pest management on point, right? Keeping the bad bugs away by having the barbed wire fence up with nice, good organic sprays, or you got to it late and now you gotta use the poison, right? Um, there's all that to consider, and the better you are up front and about the tedious stuff and the important shit, the better off you are in the long run. Um, Consistently, the smallest shit is the stuff that matters the most, and that's like a facet all through your life. And you'll find there's a lot of stuff that connects, and that's one of them is the plucking the leaves, the training, all the time it takes you to trellis stuff up. That kind of matters a whole lot. Getting that done really puts it together. The better you trim up your plants, the better you train them. That plays such a huge role in what you're going to get for yield wise, flower density, the shape of the colas, and all that stuff. Um, it's all on you. It's not a magic bottle or secret tech. It's literally just plucking leaves and making branches and putting branches in the open area to cover light space. Covering light space is the name of the game. If you cover a 4x4 and you prune it up good, you train it well on 1,000 watt HPS, I expect you to get 2 pounds. If it's something like a GMO glue, something like that throws out, yeah, where's 2 pounds? That should be a goal. You can get that. 630s, 315s, half pound, 3/4 pound, you can do it. 600 watt, 1 to 1.5, you should be able to get that. You should be able to get that. It's work, but you can get that. Um, and this is like stuff that can even go up from there, right? There's some guys on the Gravita LEDs, any the growers, any of the ones that got the Samsung diodes on them. They're pretty good on an even footage platform, some give or take. But other ones that are like 650, 700 watts, you can get like 2.5, 3 off of those. We have guys that get that number off of those. It's not even us. It's multiple customers with like with results, with scale. Like they come in and like they got it, all right. So that's all achievable. And a lot of it isn't like these guys aren't all incredibly smart, but they just do the right things right. And they aren't even perfect at it, but they do enough of it right where it adds up in the end. Um, and so hopefully that's a goal for this whole thing is to get you all on a plane where this is all achievable. How do I spend right to get it? How do I not just buy the cheapest stuff to get by, but to get stuff that'll last me a while, that'll stand the test of time. A lighting control, a lighting control box like you see right there, that Helios. Uh, Getting one of those wired in, knowing how it works. Like, putting together 4 light timers, 6, 8, 10 light time, 12 light timers, the little individual ones, and seeing people try to even just get those to fire up all at once, not let alone like the electrical gymnastics it would take to get like 6 lights to pop off all on 120 off individual like timer. Wild. They're wild, right? That's a fire. Or breakers are popping for sure. Uh, all these things go into it. Hopefully we get through it and we get you guys to a point where you're comfortable. you're confident in what you're throwing down, and you really put out some quality stuff for a great input of price, and some real gratification over like the success of spending our time doing this thing. Um, you are in this garden for at least 2 months for every bloom cycle, so you better like it, or else it's going to turn into like ugly work real quick. It'll be like any full time job you've had that you've never really loved, and if that's not something that you're willing to get into, that could be something that just really turns you off about all this. So a lot to consider, and we'll get into all that. So I think